another edition of Grown Folks Business. It's a beautiful Thursday.
Can I tell you, it's still, to Andre's point, Jay Dwayne's point, it's still so prevalent. And I know I'm tired. I can't imagine what you guys are like being in that skin and like, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
And wholeness. I want to live a life without any lack. And that's my ultimate desire. And it's really about inventory, if you will.
Whatnot. And you get really busy and you get on a train track that just carries you through a number of years.
We shared with mom and family that, we won't be there. We won't be home every Christmas. With birthdays that we'll celebrate. We'll call, we'll celebrate, but it might not be on that day.
All right. Welcome to another edition of Grown Folks Business. I'm so glad to be joined by some of the usual suspects, and that includes one that has been, well, I'll say two that have been missing in action. But Jay, you've been here a little bit more frequently in the most recent of times, but our buddy Bob has been off and away and somewhere that his won't be disclosed unless he discloses it. But he is pretty much the inspiration for the topic today. Your worldview, do you shape it or does it shape you? So I'm glad to be joined by you two gentlemen and Celeste, who was it last week, Celeste, or the week before last? When we had a really good show about politics, and I had Celeste and Ajane on, and it was so enriching, and I was glad to share that time and space with those two young ladies. So and I think Lisa was on as well, so I apologize if I left her out. But I'm here today in the beautiful outdoors. It is a gorgeous day. Spring has sprung early, I guess. But I'm here to ask, first and foremost, what is your worldview? And then do you shape it or does it shape you? So I want to begin with the prompt, but I'm going to begin by asking, what's your worldview? As an example, just for clarity, I'll begin. I like to think that I'm here to fight for the betterment of us. So my worldview is one of strong potential for the best outcome we can have for progress to be made as a human species. Yeah, of course, I look backwards to look forward. So when I see things that have transpired in the past, opportunities that were missed for us to be further along than what we are, I'm here to say that I believe that the opportunities still exist and we just have to make the most of them. So I have a worldview that is the work will continue, and it's as MLK said once, the moral arc of the universe bends towards morality or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but yeah. So I have that type of worldview. I'm interested in hearing you guys. So I'm going to start with the man, the myth, the legend, the guy that's been jet setting and high flying and doing his best imitation of Ric Flair. Bob, what you got going on, man? What is your worldview, and do you shape it or does it shape you?
I thought you were talking about Jay Dwayne.
Hold up, Bob. That's an opportune time to be like, woo! That's Ric Flair. That's Ric Flair impression.
Oh,
but
okay.
Anyway, go.
I'm not very Flairish. I'm not very Flairish. So I don't know. I don't know how to articulate. I think that's correct. My worldview. But let me think about doing that. Because I think one's worldview, if it's not perpetually evolving, I think you're really missing out on what the world offers to you. And I think that one's worldview starts by what they experience and see growing up. And that starting place really is literally a starting place from which your worldview hopefully expands, hopefully grows more optimistic, but it may very well not, again, dependent upon what you're exposed to. I think you bring certain things into it, but then it talks back to you. And so there's this interactive evolution of perspective based upon your starting place, based upon what you experience, and based upon how you respond to what you experience, based upon your nature. Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic by nature? Are you cynical? Are you naturally trusting? Are you naturally suspecting? But all that requires an open spiritedness. Because if you go looking at the world from a position of arrogance or closed-mindedness, what you find is going to be very, very different than if you go into new places, new experiences, and so forth, with hope and with optimism and with a compassionate view toward things that you've never seen or never experienced and never talked about.
So with that being said, can you articulate now your world view?
Yeah, I think my worldview is that we all contribute and we all impact it. We all impact each other's worldview, and we all bring to the table certain things, and we leave with something that's formed by the collective of our experiences and whatnot. And so I think that the mission, if you will, is to really understand that we're players in the worldview of the rest of the world. And what do we want that play or contribution to be? And how can we make that positive for others, which is the best way to make it positive for ourselves? How do we bring a sense of help and a sense of compassion? You know, I've been a lot of places, and if I take the same self into all of those different places, what I take away from all those different places, or what I experience in all those different places, is very different one place to the other. And it's not about me being different. It's about what I encounter. And it's about the attitude of the environment or the mindset of the environment. Something I remember that I always was amused by. I studied French for 8 years, and yet spending time in France was much more challenging than spending time in Italy. And it was all about the notions of interaction and communication and expectation. But my takeaway from time in those places was different, but it was nonetheless constructive. And so, you know, we don't control much. We control ourselves in an environment that we don't control. And so, again, that's a matter of what do we do with it, and how do we make it as constructive as we possibly can. And where do we go back to because of our sense of gratitude or our sense of constructive experience or our experience of beauty or lack of it?
Yeah. There's you started off in a place that should come up in the next question, and I'm looking forward to getting to that because it's kind of about when did you discover that the world could have that effect on you, and you could potentially have that effect on the world. So we ain't at that question yet, but it came
Okay.
up a little bit, Bob. But
Sure.
I appreciate that. Coming to you, Jay Dwayne. I'm gonna save the women for last, but Jay, uh, what is your worldview, and do you shape it or does it shape you?
I was sitting there thinking about what Bob was saying, and I feel like we're very close in that regard. I do feel like it's a combination of um, conditional shaping and then stepping outside of that and defining it for yourself. I'm very careful with saying that because a lot of times, working in um, value based places, a lot of people don't realize the values that they carry, which is the same with perspective. A lot of times, individuals argue about the nuances of perspectives versus the overarching thing, the big picture. So when you start thinking about it, one thing for certain is no matter where we are in this world, we know that people are trying to live. No matter where they are, they're trying to live. Now, how they live is where it becomes a little bit more questionable. And we can kind of debate that. And so I tend to lean more towards we're all trying to figure it out and we're all using the resources that we have within whatever environment that is to do that. And I feel like because of the human evolution, a lot of things we have been given that we don't realize. Some of them think that it's innate, but it's very conditional or behavioral that have been passed down and has also shaped the way that we view life. But then there becomes a personal accountability when you say, why do I believe what I believe? And so I feel like we got to have that both, like this was given to me, but this is what I'm willing to accept, or this is what I can influence to change. So I think it's a marriage of both.
Nah, I really like that observation. Of course, Bob's as well. It's this understanding that we're all trying to live. Can we at least agree on that, right? I mean, oh, well, my perspective says, and your perspective, no, it's not. At the minimum, on a base level, we have to agree that we're trying to live, and then we can actually say live comfortably. So can we just be rational about some of that? But yeah, you're right. I think some people get enamored with their subjective perspective, and then they project, and that part is what limits I think some common sense in the world. um Celeste, I'm coming to you, and then Mary Carmen, I'm coming to you. Celeste, your worldview, do you shape it or does it shape you?
I feel like it's a little bit of both because when you are a young child, it's shaped by what goes on around you. Your worldview is shaped by what you are exposed to within your household, what your parents expose you to outside of your household, what you learn from the people around you, the behaviors, the skewed views, the nuances, all of that. Because as a child, you're a blank slate until the people around you come in and start painting. And whether that be painting you in dark colors and messing you up, that's one thing. Whether it be in light colors and sending you into the world emotionally healthy, those things are around you. Now, once you turn about 14, 15, you start to dive into mainstream culture. And I would say around 16 is when you start to get into those subcultures. And, what is it? A lot of those TV shows about high school and stuff from that period of growing up, they talk about like the kids that would wear all black to high school, or the jocks, the cheerleaders, all those different stereotypical groups in that high school age. When you start to find your own self in your own crowd, that's when I feel like you start to predominantly start to change the painting yourself. So if it's all a blank canvas and you're either getting dark colors, light colors, a mix, once you put dark colors on a canvas, you can't erase them. You can start to add yellows, you can start to add blues, you can start to add reds, you can start to change the level of darkness. You can add in whites and make gray. You can start to lighten the colors on the canvas, but you can't erase what's there. But if you have a light canvas, the same rule applies. life is going to throw some dark paint on that canvas. So therefore, even though you started out with bright colors, you're going to end up with grays, you're going to end up with blues, greens. We're all going to get different colors on our canvases, but it's based off of what we start out as from the life that we have growing up, and also what we're going to add to it ourselves individually. So your worldview is shaped by the world that surrounds you, but also once you get to a certain point in life, you start to shape it yourself. Are you going to choose to educate yourself? Are you going to choose to learn more? Are you going to choose to continue the toxic tendencies of your childhood that gave you the dark colors? Are you going to continue to go with the light colors? Are you going to explore the world that's beyond your area code, or are you going to stay in that small condensed area? I would say, as a woman, I always knew that you're judged differently, but working with a group of men, I've learned how some men view women and how they choose to benefit and prey upon those with limited worldviews versus diverse worldviews. Working with older women, you learn that women do the same thing, but they do it differently. So I'm looking at this man who grows up with all this trauma, and I'm going to add light colors to the canvas, but they're going to be the light colors that I want to see. And then I'm not going to necessarily go in and fix XYZ because this benefits me. With men, I had a conversation with a group of men. They purposefully stated they purposefully chose wives with limited life views and limited understanding of what goes on around them so that they could add the colors to the canvas that they chose and then keep them away from certain colors that they didn't want them to get into. But now they're complaining on how their children have limited life views because their mothers haven't been exposed to a lot. And now they feel like they have an extra child, or now they're worried about their daughter not necessarily being hip to the game of every boy that says, I like you, don't love you. And they're struggling with that as they're teenagers, or they have sons who can't carry conversations with anyone because you're staying at home with mom all day and mom doesn't know how to be social because dad got her at a young age. Or women who purposefully get men that have social issues, so he has a bad relationship with his mother. I'm not going to add the colors to the canvas to try to help him fix that, even though I will say it's not somebody else's job to heal your own trauma. But I'm going to take advantage of that and now make him dependent on me, so our relationship is built off of XYZ. You shape your worldview, but the world around you shapes it as well. Who you are from infancy to 16 is definitely those around you. Until 14, you're not really adding much to it. But once you get to that stage of, I would say, 2021, where you can really make those choices about what you want to go into the world and discover, the colors that you choose to add to your canvas are your own. And I'm speaking from my experience of my little bit of life. From 14 to 20, I'm saying that whatever color that was added was just whatever was going on at the time, because I was still very much finding out who I was. I was still cementing my views. I was still cementing what I thought the world would be, what I wanted out of life, what I thought I was going to chase, who I thought I would become, and the things that I wanted to see. And also discovering that there are so many views in the world. Yours are not always correct, and multiple views can be correct at the same time. There can be two truths, sometimes three, and not necessarily a lie there. And I feel like from 14 to 20 was when I really learned that. We ain't all got to be on one accord, but the people in my circle got to at least have the same moral foundation. We might not take the same route, but we have to all somewhat exist in the same realm of going up to a random person and stabbing them in the neck is wrong. Like, the basics.
I appreciate everything you said, and I definitely fall in line with the understanding that after you reach a certain age, it's up to you to become who you want to be, as opposed to whatever the world has told you you are at that point, or whoever the world has told you are at that point. I am a big believer in that. You still need support and nurturing, but there is an opportunity there if you take advantage to be who you desire and not what someone has ascribed to you. I love the comments you were making about the colors. how you're paying it, so to speak. So yeah, that was a word. I greatly appreciate that. Mary Carmen, I'm coming to you next. Um, what is your worldview? And I know you got some worldly experience as well. So uh, do you shape it or does it shape you?
Greetings, everybody. I'm going to agree with everybody. I think that when we are young, the world does shape us. And as we experience not only what's in 3, 5 miles around us, but beyond that, is what we can kind of discover the world itself. Um, Today I was talking exactly something related to the topic, so I was intrigued about the conversation because when I was growing up, I thought the world was all. Mm, let me um, put it correctly. I thought the whole world was Catholic because I was raised in a Catholic culture where 99% of all the my surroundings, the majority of Mexico and Latin America is Catholic. So I thought that the whole world was Catholic. And when I came to the United States, especially here in North Carolina, and I saw all of these denominations, I was like, what is this? I started questioning. And if you don't get exposed, you can truly just keep thinking that the whole world is a certain way. And then it also shapes your environment and how brave you are to experience some things that are out of your surroundings. Um, for example, my last trip out of the country was in Dominican Republic, and I had literally forgot how precious water is. Because here in the United States, you go anywhere and you see the people just, literally wasting the water as you wash your hands. And if you're not using the water, you keep letting it run. And just, very in your house, in restaurants, in the movie theaters, you just, go use the bathroom, for example, and you see how everybody just turns the water, and maybe they're not using it right there and then because they're putting soap, and then how they rinse the water, and they just, I mean, it's, let's just say that here in the United States you can spend 20 liters on washing your hands, and in another part of the world is 1 cup. And so it kind of remind me to see that the environment that you are really does shape you. So I had kind of remember how precious water is, because there was there was times I spent over there a month, and there was a period of during the day that the water pressure of the city would not be enough. So you either literally save water in big beans, like in the place that I was, during the time the government or whoever is allowing that pressure of water to go, and you make reservations, or you just don't do anything and wait until the water again starts to be enough pressure to even take a shower or brush your teeth. And so when I came back, I started, because of that experience and that reminder, I, here in my house, my world kind of started changing about this water situation. And not, and I'm just saying water because it was a very easy example for me to see, but there was many other things, like food, transportation, and all of that. And I really never thought that I would be brave enough to go into an environment where there is no comfort, where there is no, let's see what I want to eat. Do you want to eat sushi? Do you want to eat this? I mean, there's not that available of choices. And so another experience that happened in this trip was that the majority of the time that I would go to another nation was, for vacation or for just pleasure. So in that concept, if you go to any five-star hotels in another country, you're pretty much going to get the same thing, the same service, the same comfort, the same thing, whether you are, in Africa or Europe or Latin America, because the standards of that lifestyle is kind of the same. So what world do you belong? Do you belong to a 5-star lifestyle where if you are here in the United States or in Europe, is kind of like the same treatment? Or are we brave enough to say, let me get out of my comfort zone, and instead of going to, Miami, let's say, let me go to the streets of Chicago and let's see, how that is and what experience am I going to get, and what is the world of the people in Miami and what is the world of the people in Chicago, just to keep it national.
Nah, I get it. I like that you are bringing. Well, we're talking about color and we're talking about water, and I like the water thing because you're basically expressing how much is actually out of your control. What you're accustomed to in one place isn't the norm in another. So yeah, expanding your worldview, which gets me to this other question, has so much to do with what you encounter as a youngster. And I want to touch on that. Bob, did you have a comment? Because I'm coming right back to you if you wanted to make it.
No,
okay.
I'm listening, and I'm really interested in all of what I'm listening to.
All right. So I'm going to start with you again. But you kind of expressed this when you made your comments about worldview. But when did you realize there was more to the world, more to see, more to explore? I, as everyone has alluded to, acknowledge that in my childhood, and the things that came to mind, one of the ones primarily was Smurf Island, going to Carowinds. I mean, it's as small of a bit of exposure that is, when you reflect back and think about how awesome it is to be somewhere like an amusement park, and some of the stuff that you get to encounter and experience in these little enclaves and villages that exist in certain amusement parks like Carowinds or Disney World, et cetera, et cetera. There's often some type of celebration of another culture, or even if, like I said, Smurf Island, even if it's some animation or some old cartoon, it's still an acknowledgement of something different, and you get to be exposed to it. For me, it was Carowinds, it was Connecticut, it was books, travel in general. So when did you notice there was more to the world and more to see, Bob?
I think probably, again, excellent question. I've never thought about that, but I think probably it was when we took a family vacation to Florida. And Florida, I had in my head Florida as this exotic place because it had palm trees, it had Everglades, and it was this exotic place several states away from North Carolina. And I say several, it was, 3. And, that's when, I went to a place where a macaw would sit on my shoulder and bite buttons off of my shirt. And that was really, really cool. Or where I would go see, to give away my age, Cape Canaveral, then Cape Kennedy, and where the rockets would launch from. And it was just physically a different place. Animals were different. People weren't so much different, but the place was different. The animals were different. The plants were different. The trees were different. It was flat. And so that's probably it. I want to hop on some things that Mary Carmen said. Exposure is critical, and because exposure triggers curiosity, it triggers challenge to preconceptions, it triggers recognitions of things you've never thought of, it triggers a sense of opportunity. It triggers so many things, and if you're never exposed to new and different things, you're really shut off. You're really closed down. And I also really like, Mary Carmen, you're talking about water, because we are so accustomed to water being safe and ubiquitous. And we understand the difference between water from our faucets, water from water fountains in our schools, waters in the lakes, waters in the streams. We understand the differences in all of those things. And we don't understand, water pressure comes and goes. Water isn't potable. Water might be potable. Water may be non-existent. Water may be available for washing hands, but it's not potable, or for a toilet or not, or for a hole in the ground or not. When we experience other places and we realize running water is a luxury. I can get water, but running water is a luxury. Or, for heaven's sakes, hot water. For heaven's sakes, drinkable water. For heaven's sakes, more than a dribble of water. And oh, by the way, running water might be only for middle class and above. Decent pressure might be only for upper middle class and above. An indoor shower, heaven forbid. And if there's hot water, that is upper class. And a lot of people go into those kinds of different environments and don't like it. They reject it. They judge it. They do all of these things like that. And if you do that, what you miss about life, what you miss about people, what you miss and lose in whatever worldview you might be developing is huge. It's huge. And I think that going into the different environments and ever judging the physical possibilities or the water possibilities or the this or the that, and basing the value of it on American values is such a miss about the world. And I can tell you that there are people who don't have running water, or who may just have a lavatory in the house. Toilets outside, don't have a shower, have a lavatory in the house that has running cold water with marginal pressure. Those people that have that may be vastly happier than we are. Most likely are vastly happier than we are. They're more compassionate. They share more. They're more honest. They don't have this I call it socio-material competitiveness that is our nature, not just our way of certain people, but that is our nature. And so I really challenge people as you go places, don't judge on the basis of those things. Judge on the basis of the happiness of the children, the smiles of the adults, and the arms around the shoulders, because that's what life is really about. We have abused the concept of life in this country. We don't appreciate what really makes life life. We like stuff, and we like to compare ourselves with each other based upon stuff. That's not life.
That's well said, man. I couldn't be in more agreement. Yeah, the individualism that plagues us, that was a lot of the impetus for how this country developed. Just me, and maybe a couple people I'm related to, and just a few that I know and care about. But other than that, it's about what I have and what I deserve, no matter what deserves, how deserve is applied. Jay Dwayne, I'm coming to you, man. When did you realize there was more to the world, more to see, and more to explore?
Now, the interesting thing about this is I just had a conversation with a group of friends, and I was like, this is technically the first like adult generation that didn't grow up with like the Mickey Mouse Club or like Kids Incorporated. And it shows in a lot of different ways. Like when you talk about worldview, there was certain types of programming that was readily available that we could identify even with people who looked like us. One of the bigger things that like even Disney did for me, even as a child, it encouraged creative imagination. And then I was watching this, I don't know how this happened, but I was watching this TikTok, and this young lady spoke about how there was a shift with the Disney Channel and how it took away the imaginative state and tried to shape a world for us. And in that shaping of a world, it took away identity. And I was like, I never thought about that. I never really thought about it. And it was the influx of social media. The person did all the statistics about how the influx of social media caused Disney to say, hey, we need to get with the programming because people are no longer watching television per se. Now we have to be more creative. And with that, they ended up having a decline in viewership. As I was strolling, I don't know why I was on this, because when you like one thing, it changes your algorithm. It was a group of now Europeans who are really vacationing in the Americas, in the United States. And what they're campaigning is Americans don't have to go to another country because America is so big within itself that the states are like other countries in comparison. And I was like, what? And I had this feeling because I've been telling the girls, like, I want to do the Western. I told this on the show. I want to do the Western part of the state because of that. And so something in me as a child has always felt like, and it could be because I'm from Augusta, which is a military town. I'm just thinking about all of this in real time. I've always felt like the world was bigger than me. And I always felt like there was more to explore, whether from a physical standpoint, a social standpoint, a spiritual standpoint, or a creative standpoint. And I don't know if that's a result of, the television, the environment that I grew up in, or it was just an innate desire that I have as a human to thirst and search for more. But I've never looked at it as, okay, the world is big as Augusta, Georgia. My brother and I, matter of fact, I have some of our old books. My brother always wrote as even a child that he's going to live in like a big old city, and he lives in New York for 20 years. So I do think that there's something in us that calls us to that more. Now, here's the other thing. The average person don't leave a 60-mile radius of their home. So there's some beauty in that. I don't want us to also penalize a person who is content with their surrounding, because sometimes that does happen too. Like for me, I live in the suburbs. As soon as I get in the city, I don't care if it's Raleigh or Durham, I notice a difference from the parking lots, from the customers. I just went to Durham on a Saturday night, and the Waffle House is 24 hours, but you got to order it from an app. The suburbs would never. Like, what is that? The parking spaces are small. And so for me, I like the suburbs. That's not knocking my best friend who likes the city. I just realized every time I go to Durham or every time I go to downtown Raleigh, I appreciate coming to Western Wake. Like, this is where I belong. I don't have to worry about parking. I don't have to pay for parking. I don't have to do these things. But I do feel like we have to do, it's an appreciation of where we're from, but at the same time, listening to whatever that is inside of us that is saying, if it is more, it's up to us to explore it, or that's where resentment comes. So I think each person is different and their calling is a little different in that regard. Long way to answer your question. I'm sorry.
Ah, man, perfect answer though. I mean, I'm the same way. There's just places I'm going to just visit. I'm not going to stay very long, or I'm going to time my visit to those places where I'm not dealing with certain things that generally everybody else is just okay with. I'm not a lot of people person. I like to be able to move around. Celeste, I'm coming to you. When did you realize there was more to the world, more to see, more to explore?
So when I was listening to everybody answer this, I'm going to go ahead and preface this with the cautionary statement. I'm going to speak from a place of privilege and where I grew up, and I totally acknowledge what I'm about to say is coming from a privileged view. I understood that there was more to the world and there was more to explore. I understood easily by my fifth or sixth birthday, because I grew up with a father who was in the military. He was a specialist. He was 82nd Airborne. Like, he wasn't just in the unit. Like, he actually jumped out of the planes. So when, America had all this going on with Germany in the 70s and 80s, he lived in Germany for some time. And then he was in Panama when Reagan was destabilizing South American governments in the 80s. And he got to live in different splotches of the world. He's from small town North Carolina, like going back to his hometown, the big houses of slavery and the sugar shacks of sharecropping still exist. He said the first thing he was going to do when he was old enough was get out. He joined the military, left, never moved back. I come into the picture when my dad is 40. He makes it a mission to expose me to the world because he doesn't want me to grow up with a small town mindset. He doesn't want me to grow up ignorant to the facts of life. And he doesn't want me to grow up sheltered in a way where he felt like I was easily targeted by people to be taken advantage of, deal with the misfortunes of others taking advantage of my naivete. So his goal was to expose me to as much as he could. And then on top of that, I have a mother who likes to travel and plan trips. So growing up, okay, we did before I was 5, my parents had already taken me to Disney World, and they're literally regulars at Myrtle Beach. Like, it's to the point where they know the staff in the restaurants. Of course, I don't remember going to Disney World. My dad's always like, well, we took you, da-da-da-da-da. They ended up taking me again later on in life where I remember Shamu came through and splashed me and I got salt water in my eye. Very visible. But by the time I was 10, from the time I was 5 to 10, I remember we did the historical tours in Virginia, seeing Thomas Jefferson's home, seeing the different homes of, the racist slave owning presidents of the 1700s, George Washington, all of that. We stayed in Alexandria, Virginia, and I went to Arlington National Cemetery. I went to the Capitol and got to see the buildings. We went to the Washington Monument. We went to DC again after they built the MLK Monument. I was obsessed with Lilo and Stitch because Disney Channel exposed me, like Jay Dwayne was saying, Disney Channel exposed me to, there are different cultures, there are different worlds. So when I was 8, my parents took me to Hawaii. We went to Kona, Kauai, and we went to Honolulu. And I got to go on the luau's. I got to go to the luau's. I got to see Polynesian culture. I got to see Polynesian people. I still remember till this day, I was 8 years old, and the women were absolutely stunning. Like, I was obsessed. They were beautiful. The long, beautiful hair. I know, of course, some of it was show with the skirts and stuff, but I'm talking about just the women, like, as you walk through the markets, because at the time, Kona, Kauai is a smaller island, it's a small island. It's one of the islands in the back. It's not the main island. It's not where Honolulu is. So they still had a lot of the indigenous and native culture. So you're seeing these women in their regular culture wear, you're seeing them in the long dresses, their hair's down or tied up, they're taking care of children. They still have a market because they're growing their stuff on Kona, Kauai, so they don't have to import it from Honolulu. So you can walk through and you can actually go to the markets and see the people. The women were gorgeous. That's like the main thing I remember. Like I was 8 and I was like obsessed, especially with the long, pretty hair. And then when I'm getting older, of course, I am fortunate enough to go to DC. I'm also a competitive cheerleader. So I'm going to Ohio, I'm going to Florida, I'm going to these different parts of the country and seeing how different cultures work. And then as I move into adulthood, where was the first, I can't remember. It was one place that we drove through. And it was the first time, I think, of course, I had seen housing projects. I had seen low income communities, but it was the first time I seen a home. And I was like, this is what poverty genuinely looks like, not on a governmental scale where they have the government systems and that's what they're living off of and that's how they're receiving help. But I'm talking about like, this is what, there's no government system here. We're making ends meet the best we can. This house is the best we can do. It's what we're going to live in and we just have to figure it out. It was some southern state, I forgot, but I was in shock. And then I went to New Orleans, Louisiana with my parents the summer before I started law school. And my cousin lives there. And he was like, okay, here's the French Quarter, but you leave the French Quarter and people don't realize, of course, if you paid attention to Hurricane Katrina, you know that New Orleans, Louisiana is not a wealthy area. But when you leave the French Quarter and you see it for yourself, it's like, oh, there's one strip of wealth in a sea of poverty, and that's all they talk about. Like, I talk about healthcare for a living. I study healthcare for a living. I wouldn't go to that hospital if my life depended on it. Y'all better take me somewhere else. The hospital did not even look well kept, safe, or sanitary. I was scared. So I can only imagine those people that live there, that have to go there, receiving that type of healthcare. So I always knew there was a bigger and greater world because I was fortunate enough to be blessed with a family that could provide those opportunities for me to see it. But understanding the exploration of that world and understanding the pure, like I said, the blank canvas earlier, you have to go into the world with a blank canvas to truly understand what you are about to see. Because I was a small child, and my dad, we're going out into these places, and my mom is just traveling. She's just, enjoying the trip. My dad is standing behind, and he was like, you see how fortunate you are? Everybody doesn't live like this. He was like, do you see how fortunate you are? He was like, you don't have to go to an outhouse in 2005. Do you understand how fortunate you are? XYZ. Do you understand why mom and dad go to work every day? Do you understand why you'll have to go to work every day? Those things had to be something that somebody wiser than me had to prepare me to see and to accept, because understanding that there is a greater world out there also means you have to understand that the greater world is not luxurious. Yeah. America and Europe are genuinely the wealthiest places you will go, and China, but then you're dealing with the whole governmental issue, and that's a whole different conversation. People are screaming, oh, let's go to Bali, let's go to India, let's go to Saudi Arabia, let's go to Dubai. Once you leave the vacation area of that, most of those people struggle. People don't understand that people in India live in slums. You go to Bali and different places, it ain't pretty. But if also, like Jay Dwayne was talking about 60 miles, within most 60-mile radiuses, you have a high income community where you have homes running for 600,000 or more, and you go 3 miles down the street and 2 left turns, and you're in one of the poorest communities in your county or in your city. Going into the world and understanding that there is more to explore to the world is a blank canvas move, because like I said, those dark and light colors, they're about to get mixed on that canvas. And if you're receptive to it, your perception of the world, how people view things, it's going to change, because everybody doesn't live like you. One, some people are very privileged too, and you have to acknowledge that privilege and recognize everybody around you can't get it. And then you have to recognize that some people are doing their absolute best to make it, and they're trying to get to some level of privilege. Just going to college in itself is a privilege, whether you're taking out loans or going on scholarship. Going into the world is understanding that no two stories are going to be the same. And you have to prepare for your canvas and for your brain to be altered in ways that you will never understand. Because
Yep.
whether it be through violence, assault, finances, socioeconomic status, or anything else, it's rough for about 95% of people in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that affect how you going to paint that picture that you keep referencing. That I think is a really good analogy. Real quick, I'll mention I went to I attended virtually a presentation that was concerning World War II veterans, black soldiers, and the exposure that they received from leaving their hometowns to go to Germany and such, and France, etc., and what that did to their worldview as well. So your father being in the military definitely played a large role in that. Mayor Carmen, I'm coming to you lastly. I don't want you to rush, but give me the answer to that question. Then I have one final question to run through the space, as I try to do sometimes, and get a short answer from everybody. And we're getting close to time, but I want to get your response to when you realized that there was more to the world and more to see and more to explore.
Yes, I think it is about identity. Um, as I kind of explore other environments and countries, I realized that everybody was competing with everybody. Whether is a level of being poor, middle class, or high class. The competition was very palpable, if I may say so. Um, and when I realized that I really didn't have to compete with anybody but myself to make me a better person for the world, that really changed my view, and it gave me strength and bravery to kind of step out of the luxury of the middle high class that I grew up in Mexico. And that helped me to be able to communicate and to be really one-on-one, whether it's with, like right now, I mean, all of you are educated people, are people that are, uh, you know, with a level of comfort, with a level of that if you want to eat whatever you want tonight, you're going to be able to go and grab it. And if in 30 minutes I step out of my house here and I see a homeless, I can have a conversation with that person. And I think that's what one of the things that Bob was saying. Life really is about really connecting and being happy with that person. And when you put limits in yourself, and that's what I was kind of trying, to get out. When you put limits in yourself of, well, I'm just going to hang around with the people that I grew up, or I'm just going to hang around with, stay in an environment, regardless of what, wherever you are, so that I can keep that comfort level or that status of lifestyle, then you are missing out. You are in a level of really connecting, like truly heart to heart with the others. And then you are no longer part of the whole world, but just pieces of the world, where it doesn't matter where you are, you just want to hang out with the high class people, or you just want to hang out with these. And so you miss out on that experience of your own personal growth, to compete and to grow with yourself, to make yourself better through experiences and through other people's stories, and you kind of become numb to what really the reality, which is just really connecting with each other and be compassionate and happy and sharing and fellowshipping. You miss out.
I love it. This has been a great show for me, guys. I this is really what it's all about. I truly appreciate the folks that were able to make it here and impart such wisdom onto my heart. I greatly appreciate it. So, the introspection is critical. Having values, you have to really know that you're here to not do harm. That's something that's important to me. So being value based and recognizing our shared humanity, that those things are just, they're so important to what grown folks business is, and they're important to how I think we move in the world. So I'm going to run through the space with this last question. Just answer as quickly as you can, and I'll go first so that you have a moment. So, knowing what you know, of what are you most certain? I'm most certain that I know we need to do better. We need to, and we can. So knowing what you know now, of what are you most certain? Jay Dwayne.
Knowing what I know, say it one more time, knowing what I
Of what are you most certain?
I'm most certain now that I'm doing what I'm purposed to do. And I believe that we all need to check our values and how it's influencing how we see ourselves, others, and the decisions that we make.
Love it. Celeste, what about you?
I can't save the world, but I can try to create a better world for the people around me. Everything won't be perfect, but if I can push some good healthcare, if I can push some good education for children, if I can just make small improvements on what I believe can be a better world, I've done something right.
Leave it better than you found it. Love it. Mary Carmen, what about you?
I am most certain that every single person in the world has a value,
Well said.
whether it's the president of the United States or the homeless in Uganda, Africa.
Love it. Love it. All right, Bob, what about you, man?
We should listen more, judge less, care more, judge less, be more other oriented, less selfish. The world's not about me. It's not about my values. It's about caring for each other and cooperating in community.
Man, it's been awesome. Y'all have a wonderful night. This has done something for me, and I look forward to the next time. The next week we're off, and then we have a special interview at the end of the month. This has been great. So I appreciate you all. Y'all have a wonderful night. Everybody that's watching, y'all have a wonderful night. Early spring. Let's
Night,
enjoy.
everybody.
Y'all take care.